sleep time for people in America, but it smote my conscience that I'd contributed to talking about Ma'Khia Bryant's death before, but there's more information available so fast, I thought I should share it, which is to say it does appear to be exonerating details for the police officer involved in the incident. And it does make me feel more compassionate towards police officers. So having said that, that might cause some people to turn off straight away. And I know I was highlighting before the untrustworthiness evidenced by Minnesota police when they put out a statement after George Floyd's death, but I'll just let the video speak for itself. The officers showed journalists the videotape quite quickly of at least the beginning of what happened, and there does appear to have been a lot of activity pretty quickly. And they played it once in real time and then once again in slow motion so that you can see some of the different activity that's happening in the video. I think it's important to see, just to be able to discriminate between the death of George Floyd and the potentially life-saving action here. Knowledge El-Shabazz is still awake. Hello, Knowledge. Sorry for keeping you up. Here is the video that I just spoke of. It's about to launch.
Hey. What's going on? What's going on? Hey, get down, get down, get down, get down.
At that point, she's being given medical aid, so I'll skip forward a bit because she was shot in the chest, so it was difficult to give her medical aid because she was shot 4 times in the chest. But I think that's just to give you an idea of the auditory environment, because it's kind of too fast to see what's happening. But this is the slow motion version of the footage, which I think is more revealing. So the police officer gets out of the car and approaches some people who are standing around outside. So there's no audio for this version. You just have the opportunity to observe in more extended fashion. This girl in the pink is carrying a small dog. And from before the fast version in real time, he asked what's happening here. At this point, this lady here who's falling backwards is being attacked with a knife. So she falls down. And the police officer draws his gun. Ma'Khia Bryant is still wielding a knife. That man kicks the girl who's falling down, and the officer, Ma'Khia Bryant is holding a knife, and the girl in pink is against the car. I think the dog has fallen down at this point. Yes, the dog is at her feet. And so there's a shooting. But I think the point is that the life of Ma'Khia, the life of the girl in the pink, was at risk, and it did all happen very quickly. So it's certainly very qualitatively different from the murder of George Floyd, which happened in a very prolonged, sustained and torturous way. So I wanted to share that. I felt it was incumbent on me to do so because I talked about her death, Ma'Khia Bryant's death, before, based on the limited details of knowing that she's only 15 and that she had apparently called the police. I don't know if she did call the police at this stage, because
this is a tragic incident for all involved. But
the video is still playing.
But
But yes, the officers did at least manage to sound respectful in that press conference. I'm not an authority on whether or not that does sound respectful, actually, because I'm not Black and I don't have the same abraded feelings that people who are Black do, knowing that people with that particular skin color are often disproportionately targeted by police officers. But yes, so just showing that video because it is very confronting and sad, but also it is, I think, far more exonerating for the police officer in question than the initial details would suggest. That just we would presume something similar to the Tamir Rice shooting, where we know that a police officer came on scene and within a few seconds footage showed that he had opened fire on Tamir Rice, who was holding a toy weapon and didn't pose a threat to anyone. In that situation, there was a significant threat to the lives of two different girls who were both attacked with a knife by the young woman who died today. And yes, so there's going to be more information coming out, but I just wanted to put that out there so that I'm not participating in collective punishment. Collective punishment being holding everybody responsible for the actions of some people who've made poor, morally bad, morally condemnation-worthy choices. I think his moral choices in that moment do not appear to be that terrible. They appear to have been fast choices, acting to save the life of a girl who was being attacked with a knife, whose jugular vein could have been severed in an instant. So yes, people can posit the idea that perhaps a taser would have been a better choice as a deterrence for the violence in that moment. But yes, that's still a very debatable question as to how to prevent an attack with a knife, which can be deadly very quickly. And yes, so I no longer condemn the officer for not saying drop your weapon. So much happened in such a short space of time. So at least that's good, I guess, to have a reminder of why it's not. Most people oppose the slogan of defund the police, even if people who espouse that slogan often explain that it doesn't mean what it sounds like it means. They don't mean defund the police. They mean transform the police and reallocate police funding to other pro-community services. But fundamentally, it scares a lot of voters who feel that it would jeopardize the ability of the police force to carry out important policing duties that involve sometimes interfering in disputes and violent incidents like that and saving people's lives. So yes, just putting that out there for consideration. It is all still really sad and unfortunate whenever it happened, let alone within a few minutes of the George Floyd verdict. I'm glad the girl with the pink jumpsuit and the little puppy dog is still alive, so that's something good. And I'm sorry that Ma'Khia Bryant lost her life when she was only 15. So thank you for listening. Sorry for putting out such a brief, late video. Just wanted to be part of sharing that video, which is striking and kind of necessary to the conversation, so the conversation doesn't get too split in between two disparate realities of conservative right-wing people who will be shouting, see, I don't know what they'll be saying, see, police are always justified, and people on the left saying, see, police are never justified. We want, in order to build a solid political consensus for much needed reform of policing in the US, to be able to acknowledge realities and not just adopt extreme positions that aren't always related to the truth. And sometimes reality is extreme. Reality was extreme in the case of George Floyd and many other people who have been unnecessarily murdered. And I can say murder very calmly and emphatically with relation to George Floyd now, because it has been found in a court of law that Derek Chauvin was guilty of murder with regards to that incident where George Floyd not only died but was murdered. So Ma'Khia Bryant died today. It is less evident on the face of the video evidence that was murder, and that's something to keep in mind so that we can still have a reasonable dialogue about the need to improve police unions, police bills of rights that they have apparently in some states where it becomes very difficult to prosecute police officers for anything. what are the, there's apparently a Bill of Rights in Miami that prevents that all data is police videos, etc., are thrown out after a certain number of days, meaning if there's any delay in investigations, you can't prosecute a police officer, which is very facilitative of violence and injustice if you can't, if there's just an incentive to delay investigations to avoid prosecuting officers for actual crimes they've committed, not just failures to follow policy, but literal crimes. So thank you for the High Five Award, Knowledge El Shabazz. Thank you for watching. Thank you to anybody else who tuned in for this second video I've made today. And yes, do advise people to watch the video if they're feeling too upset about the injustice of a 15-year-old being killed today, because at least it shows that was a complicated circumstance, and it's not easy to make those decisions on behalf of the police officer and say that he definitively should have used a taser instead of a gun. He does appear to have saved the life of the girl wearing the pink jumpsuit. Yes, I'll look up the Miami Bill of Rights because I heard someone mention it today on a Miami Police Bill of Rights. Okay, so I'm looking at a Washington Post article. I can share that on screen. So it looks like it's a law. Okay, so it starts with the Bill of Rights 47 years ago. 50 uniformed officers filed into a red brick legislative building in the Maryland state capitol, armed with stories of being wrongfully disciplined by high-handed police chiefs, gripes of low morale, and threats for lawmakers who didn't agree to help them. At stake was the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights, a first-in-the-nation law that codified workplace relations for police officers far beyond those afforded to other government employees. They included giving officers a formal waiting period before they had to cooperate with internal inquiries into police conduct, scrubbing records of complaints brought against officers after a certain period, and ensuring that only fellow officers, not civilians, could investigate them. It was not a controversial bill at the time, but its impact would be profound. Within 4 years, a Howard County police chief abandoned his call for public disciplinary hearings, citing the new law. A court ruled that an officer who was fired after using excessive force had to be reinstated and given back pay. And in 1977, a Human Relations Commission in Prince George's County was told it could not investigate police brutality allegations, a decision the county's only Black council member at the time called a slap in the face. For more than 4 decades, critics say the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights has been one of the biggest obstructions to police accountability, hindering investigations and shielding misconduct from public scrutiny. 15 other states followed Maryland in adopting a police Bill of Rights, including Wisconsin, where the police shooting of Jacob Blake this month had sparked protests. So Maryland's law goes the furthest in protecting officers. In 2015, the Baltimore mayor, a Democrat, explicitly blamed the Police Bill of Rights for blocking the investigation into the death of 25-year-old Freddie Gray, who suffered a spinal cord injury and death in police custody. Baltimore and Montgomery County have created civilian review boards for their police departments, but police accountability advocates call them toothless because they cannot interrogate officers or request disciplinary action. Gray's death prompted some changes to the law, but the Maryland General Assembly, under pressure from the police union, balked at all the changes advocates sought. Now, the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis has launched a new effort in Annapolis, with some lawyers calling for the Bill of Rights to be abolished. All right. So it was initiated in Maryland in 1973, and 15 other nations followed suit. Police influence soared in the United States in the 1970s. Historians say crime rates were spiking, and President Richard M. Nixon had just been elected after a campaign that promised law and order. There was a sense that criminal justice was too lax, that we were coddling criminals. Says Paul Butler, a Georgetown University law professor. That was the atmosphere in 1974. Okay, so public perception of rising crime is often different. So, for instance, public perception of crime rises in response to watching Cops on television. That show called Cops that made people invest heavily in cameras, videos to take of their property, but it wasn't related to a commensurate rise in crime, just the visibility of crime, because people could watch these arrest videos on the show Cops. So yes, so that was a Washington Post article published in 2020 called "There's a Reason It's Hard to Discipline Police." And I've been following stuff about police and reforming police, and I hadn't even heard of the Bill of Rights. So there you go. Now I'm interested to know which 15 states have such a Bill of Rights. But yes, apparently Miami had it, and they had 7 Black people were shot over an 11-month period some years ago. So yes, it looks like that's a very important issue to address, and that's an important issue for the public to become aware of, so that there is more political pressure to achieve reversals, legislative reversals in that way, to wind back those bills of rights if they are indeed, and it sounds like they very convincingly are, an obstacle to police accountability. Because obstacles to police accountability are smoothed pathways to murder, to extrajudicial murder, meaning murder in police custody, murder during the course of an arrest, murder that is not execution by the state, which many of us are not fans of in any case. But yes, civil servants murdering citizens shouldn't happen. If a death occurs in the course of responding to an incident with extenuating circumstances for the death, such as preventing a murder, then that's going to be more acceptable to the public. But yes, citizen advisory boards that are toothless because of police bills of rights in various states, let's make that not happen anymore. Hopefully the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act addresses that problem with those bills of rights. So thank you, Knowledge El-Shabazz, and thank you to anybody else who joined in, and all the best. Have a good rest until we talk again. Bye. Oh, Christopher was here and said something. Said take care. Thanks, Christopher. All the best. Big day for America. Bye, everyone. Thank you, audience. Knowledge, Chris.